It's December 2nd, 1984. You're lying on a mat in a narrow lane in the old city of Bhopal in central India. The air is cool and still. Around you, the sounds of the neighborhood settle into quiet. A dog barking somewhere, the last rickshaw rattling home, the low murmur of a radio through a thin wall. You can smell wood smoke and cooking oil and the faint, familiar chemical tang that drifts from the factory on the edge of the neighborhood, the Union Carbide plant. You've lived near it for years. Some nights the smell is stronger than others. Tonight it is faint. You close your eyes. You will not sleep long. Within hours, something will go terribly wrong inside that factory, and a white cloud will roll through these lanes, these homes, these sleeping bodies. By morning, thousands of people around you will be dead. To understand how this happened, we must go back 2 decades. In the 1960s, India faced recurring famines. Millions depended on harvests that could fail with a single bad monsoon. The government embraced what was called the Green Revolution, a push to modernize agriculture through high-yield seeds, irrigation, and chemical pesticides. American chemical giant Union Carbide saw an opportunity. India needed pesticides, and Union Carbide could manufacture them locally. In 1969, the company built a small formulation plant in Bhopal, the capital of Madhya Pradesh. It mixed and packaged imported chemicals. The operation was modest, and the risks seemed low. But in 1979, Union Carbide expanded the Bhopal facility to manufacture methyl isocyanate, amic, on site. Amic is a volatile, highly toxic intermediate chemical used to produce the pesticide 7. The decision to produce it in Bhopal rather than import it would prove fateful. By the early 1980s, the Bhopal plant was losing money. Indian farmers couldn't afford the pesticides it produced. Union Carbide began cutting costs. Maintenance schedules were deferred. The workforce was reduced from over 1,000 to around 600. Skilled operators were replaced with less experienced ones. Safety systems designed to contain a leak of MIC fell into disrepair. A refrigeration unit meant to keep the chemical cool and stable had been shut off months earlier to save on freon costs. A gas scrubber, designed to neutralize escaping MIC, was undersized for the tanks it served. A flare tower, the last line of defense, was disconnected for repairs and never reconnected. Internal audits had flagged these problems. A 1982 safety inspection by Union Carbide's American team identified over 60 hazards at the Bhopal facility, 10 of them in the MIC unit. But the recommendations were not fully implemented. The plant continued to operate. Meanwhile, the city grew towards the factory. When the plant was first built, it sat on the outskirts of Bhopal. But through the 1970s and into the 1980s, informal settlements spread around its perimeter. Families built homes of bamboo and sacking within meters of the factory walls. The densest settlement was Jayaprakash Nagar, immediately south of the plant. Its residents were among the poorest in the city: daily wage laborers, rickshaw pullers, rag pickers. They knew little about what the factory produced. Some believed it made medicine for crops. Few understood what MIC was or what it could do to a human body. On the night of December 2nd, 1984, a routine maintenance procedure involved washing out pipes connected to the MIC storage tanks. Water was introduced into the system. What happened next remains a matter of dispute. Union Carbide later claimed sabotage, while investigators and workers pointed to faulty valves and poor maintenance. What is not disputed is the result. A large quantity of water entered Tank 610, which held approximately 42 tons of liquid methyl isocyanate. MIC reacts violently with water. The chemical began to heat. Pressure inside the tank started to climb. Operators in the control room noticed the pressure gauge rising but initially dismissed it. The instruments at the Bhopal plant were unreliable. Gauges often gave false readings. By the time they understood what was happening, it was too late to stop it. Shortly after midnight, the pressure in tank 610 exceeded the capacity of its safety valve. The valve burst. A massive plume of methyl isocyanate gas, mixed with other reaction products, erupted from the tank and rose into the night air above the factory. The gas scrubber, meant to neutralize the escaping chemical, had been turned on but was ineffective. Some accounts suggest it had been on standby, others that its caustic soda was insufficient. The flare tower was still disconnected. The refrigeration unit was still off. Every safety system that might have contained or reduced the disaster had failed. MIC is denser than air. The white cloud did not rise and disperse. It sank. Carried by a light wind, it drifted south and southeast, directly toward the densest neighborhoods surrounding the plant. In Jayaprakash Nagar and the surrounding Bastis, people woke coughing. Their eyes burned. Their lungs felt as though they were being scorched from the inside. Children vomited. People stumbled out of their homes into the lanes, gasping, barely able to see. There had been no warning siren. The plant's public alarm system had been activated briefly, but was then switched off, reportedly to avoid causing panic. Most residents had no idea what was happening. Many ran toward the factory, not away from it, because they did not know the gas was coming from there. Those who ran survived at higher rates than those who stayed. Misha is heavier than air, and it pooled close to the ground. People who lay down, or who were too weak or too young to flee, infants in cribs, the elderly, the disabled, were exposed to the highest concentrations. Many died where they lay. By 2 a.m, Bhopal's Hamidia hospital was overrun. Thousands of people poured through its doors, blinded, frothing at the mouth, struggling to breathe. Doctors had no idea what chemical they were dealing with. Union Carbide had not disclosed the precise toxicological profile of MIC to local medical authorities. Dr. Harish Chandra, the head of forensic medicine at Gandhi Medical College, would later describe the scene as unlike anything he had witnessed. Patients arrived in waves, many already beyond help. The hospital had no protocol for a mass chemical exposure of this scale. No hospital in the world did. When the sun rose on December 3rd, the full scale of the catastrophe became visible. Bodies lay in the streets and in the lanes of the settlements nearest the plant. Animals, goats, dogs, cattle, lay dead in open fields. Trees had shed their leaves overnight. The landscape looked as though it had been scorched by an invisible fire. Mass cremations and burials began almost immediately. Trucks carried bodies to burial grounds. Estimates of the death toll on that first night vary. The Indian government's initial figure was 3,787, but independent investigations and activist groups have long argued the true number was between 8,000 and 16,000 in the first 72 hours alone. Hundreds of thousands more had been exposed. Many who survived the initial gas cloud developed chronic respiratory illness, neurological damage, blindness, and immune disorders. The poisoning did not end when the cloud dispersed. It had entered their bodies, and, in many cases, it would never leave. In the days that followed, Union Carbide's chairman, Warren Anderson, flew to India. He was arrested upon landing in Bhopal, but released on bail within hours. He returned to the United States and never stood trial in India. He died in 2014 in Florida at the age of 92. In 1989, the Indian government settled with Union Carbide for $470 million, a sum widely criticized as inadequate, amounting to roughly $500 per victim. The settlement was approved by India's Supreme Court. Many survivors felt betrayed. They had not been consulted, and the amount did not begin to cover their medical costs. Union Carbide was later acquired by Dow Chemical in 2001. Dow maintained that all liabilities had been settled. Meanwhile, the abandoned factory remained standing. Toxic waste from the plant leached into the groundwater. Decades later, communities near the site still reported contaminated water supplies and elevated rates of birth defects and cancer. Among those who refused to let Bhopal be forgotten was Rashida B., a survivor whose sister and 3 nieces died from illnesses caused by the gas. Along with Champa Devi Shukla, she spent decades organizing other women survivors, demanding medical care, clean water, and accountability. In 2004, they were awarded the Goldman Environmental Prize. Their persistence kept the disaster in public consciousness long after the world's attention had moved on. Every December, survivors and activists march through Bhopal, carrying photographs of the dead. They chant a phrase that has become inseparable from the disaster itself. No more Bhopals. The Bhopal disaster remains the deadliest industrial accident in recorded history. It transformed the global conversation about corporate responsibility, environmental justice, and the right of communities to know what dangers exist in their midst. It led directly to stricter chemical safety regulations in the United States and Europe. But for the people of Bhopal, the disaster is not a historical event. It is an ongoing condition. Second-generation survivors, children born to parents exposed to the gas, report higher rates of growth deficiencies and chromosomal abnormalities. The contaminated groundwater has never been fully remediated. The factory still stands, fenced off but undecontaminated. Bhopal asks a question that remains unanswered. What is the value of a life lived in poverty, beside a factory, in a country far from the boardrooms where decisions are made? It is a question about distance, the distance between those who profit and those who pay. And it is a question that echoes still, in every place where industry and vulnerability converge, wherever the wind might change.